The backstage hallway buzzed with nervous energy as contestants hurried past carrying guitars, water bottles, and dreams too fragile to speak aloud. Stage managers called names over headsets while bright lights from the arena leaked through the curtains like tiny stars. In one quiet corner near a stack of black equipment cases stood a skinny Filipino boy wearing worn sneakers and a faded denim jacket that looked one size too big. His name was Miguel Santos, and he could barely stop his hands from shaking. At just 14 years old, Miguel had traveled farther than he had ever imagined possible. Back home in the Philippines, his family lived in a small coastal town where fishing boats lined the shore every morning before sunrise. Their tiny house stood beside a narrow dirt road that flooded whenever heavy rainstorms arrived. The paint on the walls had long since faded under the heat of endless summers, and the roof creaked loudly whenever the wind became too strong. Yet inside that humble house lived something powerful: music. Miguel's father used to sing while repairing fishing nets late at night. His mother hummed old Filipino love songs while cooking rice over a small stove. Even when money disappeared and food became scarce, songs somehow survived. But everything changed 2 years earlier. Miguel's father became sick after months of working long nights at sea during violent storms. What began as constant coughing slowly turned into weakness so severe he could barely stand. Doctors in the nearest city explained that treatment would cost more money than the family could ever imagine earning. Miguel watched his father grow thinner every month. He watched his mother secretly cry while pretending to smile during dinner. And one evening, after the electricity cut out again, Miguel sat outside beneath the moonlight with an old borrowed guitar resting across his knees. "Sing for me," his father whispered from the doorway. Miguel hesitated. He had always been shy. Singing in front of classmates terrified him. Even at church gatherings, he kept his eyes lowered whenever people asked him to perform. But that night was different. So he sang. His voice floated gently through the warm night air, soft at first, then stronger with every word. He sang an emotional ballad his father loved when he was younger. Neighbors walking past the house slowed down to listen. Some stopped entirely. When the song ended, Miguel looked toward his father. Tears rolled quietly down the man's face. "That voice," his father whispered weakly, "was given to you for a reason." 3 months later, his father passed away. After the funeral, silence filled the house like heavy smoke. Miguel stopped singing for weeks. Every melody reminded him of the nights his father used to clap proudly from the doorway. Then one afternoon, Miguel's mother handed him a small envelope. Inside was money collected from neighbors. "What is this?" Miguel asked. "They believe in you," his mother said softly. "There's a talent audition in Manila. They want you to go." Miguel stared at her in disbelief. "We can't afford. You owe it to your father to try." Those words stayed with him forever. The Manila audition led to another audition. Then another. Months later, a video of Miguel singing inside a crowded mall spread online across the Philippines. People couldn't believe such a powerful voice came from a quiet teenage boy carrying a cheap guitar. Soon producers from an international talent show reached out. And now, unbelievably, Miguel stood backstage preparing to perform in front of millions. America's Got Talent. The giant stage terrified him. He could hear the crowd cheering through the walls while contestants ahead of him performed under blinding lights. His chest tightened with fear. A production assistant approached with a clipboard. "Miguel, you're next." His stomach dropped. As he walked toward the stage entrance, he could barely breathe. Then he touched the small necklace hanging around his neck. His father's old fishing hook. Miguel closed his eyes. "Please help me sing," he whispered. The curtain opened. The audience applauded politely as Miguel stepped onto the massive AGT stage. The bright lights instantly blinded him. Thousands of faces stretched endlessly before him. At the judges' table sat Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum, and Howie Mandel. Simon adjusted his glasses while studying the nervous teenager. "What's your name?" Simon asked. "I'm Miguel Santos, sir." "And where are you from?" "The Philippines." The crowd cheered loudly. Miguel smiled nervously. "How old are you?" Heidi asked warmly. 14. "How are you feeling right now?" Sophia asked. Miguel laughed shakily. "Honestly, very scared." The audience laughed supportively. Simon leaned forward. "Tell me why you decided to come here." Miguel looked down briefly. My father passed away 2 years ago, he said quietly. Before he died, he told me my voice was a gift. So, I wanted to honor him. The audience instantly grew silent. Simon's expression softened. And what would winning this competition mean to your family? Miguel swallowed hard. It would change our lives. For a moment, the entire theater felt still. Simon nodded slowly. Well, Miguel, good luck. Miguel walked toward the microphone stand carrying his old guitar. His hands trembled so badly he nearly dropped the pick. The first few seconds felt unbearable. Then he began to play. A soft acoustic melody drifted across the theater. And Miguel sang. The first line came out fragile, almost whisper-like. But hidden inside that voice was pain. Real pain. Not the kind performed for television. The kind that lives deep inside someone who has lost everything. As the song continued, Miguel's voice transformed into something astonishingly powerful. Emotion poured from every lyric. His notes rose through the theater with breathtaking control, carrying heartbreak, love, grief, and hope all at once. The audience stopped moving entirely. Heidi's eyes widened. Howie slowly lowered his hands onto the desk. Sophia covered her mouth, and Simon Cowell stared at the stage without blinking. Miguel closed his eyes while singing the chorus. Suddenly it no longer looked like a nervous teenager auditioning. It looked like a son speaking directly to his father. Every word felt personal. Every note carried memories. The audience began tearing up across the theater. Some people clutched tissues. Others simply stared in disbelief. Then came the final verse. Miguel's voice cracked slightly with emotion before soaring into an impossibly beautiful high note that echoed through the entire arena. The room exploded. People jumped to their feet screaming. The judges rose immediately. A thunderous standing ovation shook the theater. Miguel lowered his guitar slowly, breathing heavily. He looked completely overwhelmed. Then the cameras cut toward Simon Cowell. Tears streamed openly down his face. The audience gasped. Simon rarely cried, yet there he sat, visibly emotional, wiping tears away while trying to compose himself. Miguel looked stunned. Howie? The host asked. Howie shook his head slowly. That, he said, was not just singing. That was storytelling through pain. You made everyone here feel your heart. The audience applauded loudly. Sophia leaned toward her microphone. You are so young, but your voice carries the emotion of someone who has lived 100 lives, she said. That was beautiful. Heidi smiled warmly. Your father would be incredibly proud. Miguel's eyes filled with tears. Then Simon spoke. But before words came out, he paused. His voice cracked slightly. That song, Simon said quietly, reminded me why shows like this matter. The theater fell silent again. You know, Simon continued, people think success is about fame or money or big moments. But sometimes someone walks onto this stage and reminds us what music is actually supposed to do. Simon pointed toward Miguel. You made us feel something real tonight. Miguel wiped tears from his eyes. Simon leaned closer. I've heard thousands of singers over the years. Thousands. But very few performances stay with me forever. He paused. I will remember this one. The crowd erupted again. Miguel covered his face while crying. Then Simon looked down at the golden buzzer. The audience immediately began screaming. Miguel's eyes widened. Simon smiled. I think your father is watching you right now, he said softly. And I think he'd say you did good. Slam. Simon pressed the golden buzzer. Gold confetti exploded across the theater. The crowd lost control. Miguel dropped to his knees in shock while golden paper rained around him like sunlight. His hands covered his mouth as he cried uncontrollably. The judges rushed onto the stage. Heidi hugged him first. Sophia wrapped her arms around him tightly. Howie clapped proudly beside them. Then Simon approached. Miguel looked up at him through tears. Simon pulled him into a hug. You earned this, Simon whispered. Back home in the Philippines, entire neighborhoods celebrated while watching from televisions inside small stores and crowded homes. Videos quickly spread across social media showing people crying during Miguel's performance. At a tiny roadside eatery in his hometown, strangers applauded after the broadcast ended. Miguel's mother sat crying in front of the television while neighbors hugged her. That's your son, one woman whispered proudly. The following morning, newspapers across the Philippines featured Miguel's face on front pages. The boy who made Simon Cowell cry. But despite sudden fame, Miguel remained the same shy teenager. During interviews, he spoke quietly and thanked everyone repeatedly. When reporters asked what he planned to do if he won the competition, he answered immediately. "Help my family." As weeks passed, Miguel advanced through the competition. Each performance revealed something deeper. One week he performed an emotional Filipino ballad dedicated to overseas workers separated from their families. Another week he sang a stripped-down version of a classic love song that left audience members sobbing. Online fans around the world fell in love with him. But success brought pressure. One night before the semifinals, Miguel sat alone backstage struggling to breathe. Negative comments online haunted him. Some people claimed his story was the only reason viewers liked him. Others insisted he wasn't technically perfect enough to win. For the first time since arriving in America, doubt consumed him. What if they were right? A quiet knock interrupted his thoughts. Simon entered the dressing room. Miguel quickly stood. "Sir." Simon waved him down. "You okay?" Miguel hesitated. "I don't know anymore." Simon sat beside him. "That means you care," Simon said. Miguel looked down. "People think I'm only here because of my story." Simon shook his head immediately. "No, people remember your story because your voice made them listen." Miguel remained silent. Simon continued. "Do you know how many contestants walk onto this stage every year with sad stories?" Miguel looked up. "Most are forgotten within minutes," Simon said honestly. "But talent, real talent, that's different." Simon pointed toward Miguel's chest. "What makes you special is right there. Emotion cannot be taught." Miguel's eyes watered. Simon stood. "Tomorrow night," he said, "stop worrying about being perfect." Then Simon smiled slightly. "Just sing the truth." The next evening, Miguel walked onto the stage stronger than ever. This time he carried no fear, only purpose. He performed an original song he had written about his father. The lyrics described fishing boats disappearing into dark oceans while sons waited at shorelines praying for their fathers to return safely. By the final chorus, nearly the entire audience stood crying. Even camera operators struggled to remain composed. Simon once again wiped tears from his eyes. After the performance ended, silence filled the arena for nearly 3 full seconds. Then came deafening applause. That performance became one of the most viewed AGT clips in history. Millions watched online within days. Celebrities shared the video. Famous singers praised Miguel publicly. Yet the moment that touched people most happened away from cameras. Late one evening after rehearsals, a janitor approached Miguel backstage. The older man spoke quietly. "My son passed away 5 years ago," he said. "I haven't cried since the funeral." He placed a hand over his heart. "But your songs made me feel him again. Thank you." Miguel hugged the man tightly. That night, alone inside his hotel room, Miguel finally understood something important. Winning wasn't the real goal anymore. Helping people feel less alone was. The AGT finale arrived faster than anyone expected. The theater overflowed with anticipation. Millions watched live around the world. Back in the Philippines, streets emptied as families gathered around televisions. Even schools organized viewing parties. Miguel stood backstage wearing a simple white suit his mother had helped choose during a video call. "You look handsome," she told him proudly. He smiled nervously. "I wish Papa could see this." His mother's eyes filled with tears. "He can." When Miguel finally stepped onto the finale stage, the crowd roared louder than ever before. Simon smiled proudly from the judges' table. Miguel took one deep breath. Then he began singing. No dramatic tricks, no dancers, no giant stage effects, just a boy, a guitar, and truth. His voice soared with extraordinary emotion, carrying every painful memory and every fragile dream that brought him there. The performance felt almost spiritual. By the final note, many audience members openly sobbed. Simon lowered his head briefly, overcome with emotion once again. The standing ovation lasted nearly 2 full minutes. When voting lines closed later that night, tension filled the theater. Contestants held hands anxiously. The host stepped forward with the final results envelope. In third place, the crowd waited breathlessly. Names were announced one by one until only Miguel and a dance group remained. The audience screamed. Miguel's hands trembled. And the winner of America's Got Talent is. A long pause. Miguel Santos. The theater exploded. Miguel collapsed into tears immediately. Confetti cannons erupted across the stage while the audience roared louder than ever before. Simon stood clapping proudly with tears in his eyes again. Miguel covered his face while crying uncontrollably. When the microphone finally reached him, he could barely speak. "This is for my father," he whispered. The audience erupted once more. Months later, Miguel returned home to the Philippines. Thousands gathered at the airport carrying signs and waving flags. Some cried just seeing him walk through the terminal. But Miguel's first stop wasn't television interviews. It wasn't concerts. It wasn't celebrations. He went straight to the cemetery. Still wearing a hoodie and baseball cap, Miguel walked quietly toward his father's grave carrying his old guitar. The ocean breeze moved gently through nearby trees. Miguel sat down on the grass. For several moments, he said nothing. Then he began playing softly. The same song he sang the night his father first told him his voice was a gift. His eyes filled with tears while singing. "I did it, Papa," he whispered afterward. The wind moved softly around him. And for the first time in years, Miguel smiled without sadness. Because deep in his heart, he knew something. His father had heard every note.